All right. Welcome in, everybody, to another deep dive
Absolutely.
where we take the sources that you send us and we kind of go through them and pull out what we think are the really interesting points. You
Exactly.
don't have to do all that work.
Shortcut to being well informed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for this one, we're going to be looking at some pretty interesting stuff, uh, kind of two different realms almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really fascinating juxtaposition of well-established science and then also some more out there concepts from the law of one material.
Right. So we've got actually quite a few different sources that people have sent us.
Yes, a really nice collection.
So we have some scientific articles on music and the body.
Hmm.
We have a manual on sound healing practices.
Yeah.
We have a thesis on therapeutic application of sound frequencies,
Yeah.
the chakra system,
Okay.
and then excerpts from the Law of One, books 1 through 5, actually.
Wow. Quite a range.
Yeah.
Sounds good fun.
Yeah. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to kind of try to see what these are telling us about how sound can affect our well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the thread that seems to run through all of this.
Yeah. And, we're going to be looking at it from all these different angles, the
Yeah.
very kind of concrete, like what's happening in your body, to the much more
Yeah, esoteric.
out there
That's-
esoteric stuff. So
Yeah.
it's going to be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so why don't we just start right at the beginning with the science?
Okay.
So there is this Longwood Seminar music reading pack
Okay.
that someone sent us.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about some really interesting stuff that's going on with music in your body and your brain.
Yeah, and one of the really interesting things about music and healing is that it's really not a new idea.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's not just a modern fad or anything like that. The reading pack actually highlights how a lot of different ancient cultures have incorporated music and chanting into their healing practices. You think of like ancient China and Greece, Native American traditions, African traditions. All of these cultures saw a connection between music and healing.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so this is something that has been recognized for a very long time.
Okay, well, that kind of leads perfectly into this Wisconsin study that
Oh, yeah.
I saw mentioned in here.
Tell me about it.
And they looked at heart attack patients in the ICU.
Oh, wow. So pretty serious.
Yeah, these are people that are, in a very serious health situation.
Right.
And they had them listen to classical music for 20 minutes.
Okay.
And what they found was that their heart rate went down, their breathing rate went down, and their heart's demand for oxygen decreased.
That's remarkable considering the state that they were in.
Yeah, and I thought this was really interesting. It said that their blood pressure didn't change.
Oh,
But the researchers thought that might be because a lot of them were already on blood pressure medication.
right. So the medication was already sort of
Yeah.
taking care of that.
Exactly. But their heart and their lungs were all responding very positively to this music.
Yeah, those vital cardiovascular functions were
Right.
really important.
And the other thing I thought was super interesting was it said that those benefits lasted for at least an hour after the music stopped.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just like a temporary
Right.
calming effect. It was actually shifting something in their system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very cool.
So it sounds like listening to music can have kind of a lasting impact on your physiology.
Yeah,
That's pretty neat.
absolutely. So then there's some information from the Harvard Health publications
Okay.
that was included in here.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes into like, okay, what's happening in your brain when you're listening to music?
Right, because clearly something's going on up there too.
Right.
Yeah.
And it talks about this distributed network
Okay.
that happens in your brain.
So not just like one specific area.
No, it's like
Uh,
different parts of your brain are all working together
Yeah.
to process the music.
Okay, so it's like a team effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it says, like, for example, the temporal lobe is involved in, like, recognizing pitch.
Okay.
And then the frontal lobes are working on the melody and the chords, the more the complex stuff.
Gotcha. So like different parts of the brain have different roles.
Right. And then the cerebellum, which, a lot of people think of in terms of movement,
Right. Coordination.
it says that's also playing a role in rhythm
Oh, interesting.
and how you connect music to physical motion.
Okay.
So it's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, so it really is like this whole brain experience.
Yeah. And then there was this part I thought was so cool.
Okay.
It talked about how when you get chills when you're listening to music, that like
Spine tingling.
spine tingling feeling.
Yeah.
It said that is your brain's reward system being activated,
Oh, wow.
like the same areas that are associated with pleasure.
Oh, wow. So like when you eat delicious food or
Yeah.
yeah.
Or,
intimacy or certain substances.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
music is really hitting those same pleasure centers in the brain.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Yeah. And then it even mentioned tone deafness and
Okay.
how that might be due to like differences in these neural pathways for people.
So some people are just wired a little bit differently when it comes to music.
Right.
Interesting.
So that was a really good kind of overview.
Yeah, absolutely. That gives you some really good background on just the basics of what's happening in your body when you listen to music.
Right. So now let's get into the sound healing stuff.
All right, let's do it.
So we have this sound healing manual.pdf
Okay.
that someone sent in.
Mm-hmm.
And right away it starts talking about, temple bells and these glass singing bowls and how they could be used in meditation.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, to kind of promote inner clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And it specifically even talks about how, like, in Japanese temples, they use the temple bells for mindfulness practices.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But then it makes a really interesting point. And it says that contrary to popular belief, there's not actually historical evidence of singing bowls being used for sound healing in India or Nepal or Tibet.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so.
That's interesting because, you see them everywhere in those kind of like new agey shops and you
Yeah.
kind of associate them with those cultures.
Right.
Uh,
And it says that it's really more of a Western development that started with this guy, Peter Hess, in the 1980s.
okay.
And he drew on some of the ancient knowledge systems like Ayurveda,
Okay.
but that specific application of the singing bowls wasn't really there.
Huh. Okay, so it's like a modern interpretation of those ancient principles.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, and then it goes into a whole section on professional conduct.
Oh, okay. So this is like for practitioners of sound healing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought this was interesting. It's really emphasizing that you need to make it very clear that you're not a medical doctor or a psychologist.
Right. So you're not diagnosing or treating any kind of medical condition.
Okay.
You're offering relaxation. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it talks about professional confidentiality.
Of course.
Maintaining that.
Right, keeping things private.
Yeah. And then it suggests starting out very gently
Oh, okay.
by like placing a singing bowl on someone's hand.
Oh, so you can like feel the vibrations.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And then it also really stresses the importance of kind of checking the client's overall condition before you proceed, but not trying to diagnose anything.
Right, you're not a doctor.
Right.
You're there to offer relaxation and sound healing.
Exactly. So it's like you're making sure that they're okay,
Yeah,
but you're not saying, oh, I think you have this.
right. Leave that to the professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I thought this was really interesting. It talks about how sound healing can shift your attention away from a deficit view.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it's like instead of focusing on what's wrong with your body,
Okay.
you're shifting your attention to like a more positive body attitude.
Oh, okay. So it's more about like acceptance and appreciation for your body.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it says that these sessions can help you reconnect with your own needs and desires and lead to an inner space of peace.
Ah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So it's about like tuning into yourself and kind of finding that inner harmony.
Right.
Yeah.
And it talks about how that can potentially empower you to make changes in your life.
Okay, so it's not just about relaxation, it's about like actually facilitating personal growth and transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it mentioned this specific type of singing bowl called a fen gong or sun gong.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's made of polished brass, and apparently it's really good for spreading the vibrations.
Oh, so it's like designed to really get that sound moving.
Right.
Huh, okay.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let's get even deeper.
Okay, let's do it.
So there's this sound healing therapeutic application of sound frequencies, Craig Gray thesis final.pdf.
Okay.
And this thesis really goes into how sound might be affecting you on multiple levels.
Okay, so we're talking physical, mental, emotional, spirit, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it looks at it specifically in relation to the chakra system.
Okay, so this is getting a little more esoteric now.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting was it's really trying to find the connection between the chakra system and the actual organ systems in your body.
Oh, so like trying to find that scientific link between those two things.
Well,
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people see those as like separate things, but this is trying to bridge that gap.
Right. And it acknowledges that, like, in mainstream medicine, it's not really accepted.
Right. It's still kind of fringe.
Right.
Yeah.
And it says that we really need more evidence
Okay.
to really understand the techniques and the mechanisms and, like, what exactly it can...
Like more research is needed.
Right.
Okay.
But it does have some anecdotal findings
Okay.
from a study.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that people reported like a lot of different benefits from sound healing.
Okay. Like what kind of things?
So physical stuff like changes in blood pressure,
Mm.
relief from sciatica,
Oh, wow.
mental and emotional stuff like less stress,
Right.
less anxiety, more focus,
Okay.
and then even spiritual stuff like feeling more connected.
Okay. So it's really running the gamut there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it mentions that, this is anecdotal.
Right.
So it's not like a controlled scientific study.
So it's based on people's experiences.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it lists all these different sound healing modalities that people were using.
Oh, okay. Like what kind of stuff?
So listening to healing music,
Okay.
using specific sound frequencies,
Mm-hmm.
tuning forks,
Okay.
chanting or mantras,
Mm-hmm.
playing gongs or drums,
Okay.
and even using online resources like YouTube.
Wow. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes a really interesting point about the chakras.
Okay.
It says that a lot of people use healing music with the intention of balancing their chakras.
Yeah.
But the research actually questioned how effective that is.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. It seems like the chakra system might be more complex than just like responding to a specific sound frequency.
Right. It's not just a simple one-to-one kind of
Right.
correspondence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it talks about how like your psychological development, your culture, your upbringing, even potentially past life experiences
Wow.
could play a role in how your chakras develop.
So it's like this whole tapestry of experiences that shapes your energetic system.
Right.
Okay.
And then it mentions like all this stuff that you see online about, instantly balancing your chakras with specific frequencies.
Oh, yeah. You see that all over the place.
Yeah. And it contrasts that with the idea that it actually takes personal effort and dedication and willpower to develop your chakras.
Okay, so it's not a quick fix. It's
Yeah.
more of a journey.
Right.
Yeah.
And it even says that some practitioners prefer to use the term energy centers instead of chakras
Oh, okay. Why is that?
because they think that chakras has all these mystical connotations that maybe put some people off.
Right. They want to make it more approachable.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then it mentions this sonic formula,
Okay.
which is frequency plus intent equals healing.
Oh, okay. So it's not just the sound itself, it's the intention behind it.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it gives a really detailed explanation of chakra 5,
Which is also known as.
the throat chakra, or
Yeah.
the Suda.
Okay.
And it talks about, its Sanskrit name and its meaning and its location and its psychological function. It even mentions like what glands and body parts are associated with it
Oh, wow.
and your sense of hearing.
Okay, so it's really getting into the specifics of that chakra.
Yeah. And then it has this part that I thought was really interesting where it talks about wanderers.
Wanderers.
Yeah. And it says that wanderers are people who believe that they came from other places to help with Earth's ascension
Oh, wow. Okay.
and that they often incarnate into challenging family situations.
So they're kind of like volunteers coming to help out.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What?
And that it talks about a guided meditation that they did where they were trying to open these energy centers.
Okay.
And it said that people had all sorts of different experiences.
Like what?
Some people felt relaxed. Some people had tingling sensations. Some people had emotional releases.
Mm.
Some people even had like physical discomfort.
Oh, wow. So it's a pretty wide range of experiences.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important for people to know.
Absolutely. Everyone's different.
Right. That, everyone's going to experience these things differently.
Yeah.
And it says that developing your chakras is all part of like becoming a complete human being
Okay.
who's able to adapt to all these different like perceptual modes.
So it's like you're expanding your capacity to experience the world.
Right.
Okay.
And then just as like a little side note, it mentions that the didgerido's frequency range includes 432 hertz
Yeah, that's interesting.
when standard tuning is applied,
Okay.
and that it's been shown to be effective in managing stress.
Huh. I didn't know that about the didgeridoo.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So now let's move into the Law of One stuff.
Okay.
So we have all these excerpts
Yeah.
from the Law of One books 1 through 5.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm still wrapping my head around a lot of this.
Absolutely. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
Yeah.
And the first thing that stood out to me was this part where Ra is correcting the questioner about a 90-degree angle.
Oh, okay.
And they say it should actually be understood as a portion of a tesseract.
A tesseract. Okay, now for the listener out there who's not familiar with that term, a tesseract is basically a four-dimensional cube.
Right.
So it's like this mind-bending geometrical concept that helps us try to visualize higher dimensions.
Yeah, and that kind of gives you a sense right away, like we're dealing with some pretty complex stuff here.
Yeah, it's not your everyday conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're talking about tesseract. What else?
And then there's this whole thing about the importance of like disciplines of the personality,
Okay.
uh, knowledge of self, and strengthening the will
Mm-hmm.
for people on the service to others path.
So it's like they're saying if you want to help others, you really need to work on yourself first.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense in a way, right? Like you need to have your own house in order before you can start helping other people.
Right. Yeah. And then Ra gives some insight into why the instrument, the person who was channeling this information, was having physical difficulties before contact.
Oh, okay.
Um, and they said that it was due to like a subconscious reserving energy.
Okay.
And it was also intensified by psychic attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's like this energetic component to it as
No.
well. Interesting.
So it's not just like, oh, they were sick or something like that.
Right.
There was like this other
Yeah,
stuff going on.
some unseen forces at play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then it talks about how wanderers are awakened to their purpose.
Okay.
And it says that they're awakened in a way that minimizes fear and maximizes understandable subjective experiences.
So it's like a gentle process.
Right. And that it often happens during sleep or during waking life.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily involve like UFOs or anything like that.
Right. So it's more of an internal awakening.
Right.
Okay.
And then it talks about how the energy ingress ends with the indigo ray.
Okay.
And that violet is an indicator of like the whole being fully activated.
So it's like the culmination of the energy flow.
Right.
Okay.
And then it talks about how negative polarization is aided by the subjugation of others.
So negativity thrives on power and control.
Right.
Okay.
And then it mentions the role of a crystallized healer.
Okay. A crystallized healer? What's that?
And a crystal in facilitating conscious awareness reorganization.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that the healer's directed will is really important.
Okay, so the healer's intention plays a big role in this process.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it gives this really interesting perspective on the Great Pyramid.
Oh, okay. I'm curious to hear this.
And it says that it was a carefully designed tool to distribute light for healing catalysts,
Oh.
but that it's not really advisable to use it for healing in a traditional way today
Why not?
because of the lack of purity in people's desires.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the intention of the people using it would affect its effectiveness.
Right.
Okay.
And it says that the pyramid acts like a funnel, increasing the density of energy, which is identified as the third distortion light.
Okay.
And then it introduces these beings from the Southern Cross as members of the Orion group,
The Orion group. Okay.
who gain strength by creating a large harvest of negatively oriented entities.
Oh, so they're kind of like the opposite of the Wanderers?
Right.
Okay.
And then it talks about how fifth density negative entities who are like really focused on maintaining cohesion
Okay.
might try to manipulate fourth density beings who are on the path to wisdom.
So it's like there's this competition going on between these different groups.
All right.
Okay.
And then it suggests that the instrument's physical problems could actually cease if they stopped channeling love and light.
Oh, wow. That's a really thought-provoking idea.
It is.
Yeah.
And then it talks about how wanderers offer planetary love and light, and it actually doubles the effect.
Oh, wow.
And that they serve as beacons or shepherds, each with their own pre-incarnative talents.
So they're like bringing in this extra light and love to help the planet.
Right.
Okay.
And it describes the mechanism of healing as using a crystallized healer as like a collector and focuser of light
Okay.
that might affect the first and seventh chakras to kind of realign the energy centers.
So using that focused energy to bring balance.
Right.
Okay.
And then it has this really interesting point about how physical disease might be less prevalent in harvestable fourth density negative entities.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says that it's because of their extreme self-interest and discipline.
Oh, so they're so focused on themselves and their own well-being that they take really good care of their physical bodies.
Right.
Huh, okay.
And then it mentions that there's this fifth density negative entity who wants to misplace members of the channeling group into a negative orientation or terminate the instrument's physical viability.
Wow. So there's some serious opposition going on here.
Yeah, and it suggests sending love and light to this entity.
Okay, so it's like they're meeting that negativity with compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it talks about how archetypes are actually aspects of the one infinite creation.
Okay.
And that they teach us through intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're contacted by the spirit as a shuttle based on the seeker's mind configuration.
Okay, so the archetypes that we connect with depend on our own individual makeup.
Right.
Okay.
But then it cautions against seeking magical ability
Okay.
without balancing the self, which
Mhm.
is a lengthy process.
So don't try to rush into things.
Right.
Okay.
And it warns against calling upon Ra
Okay.
while unprotected by the established configuration.
So it's like there are some safety precautions you need to take.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it goes to this really interesting discussion of the first distortion-free will in the context of negatively polarized entities.
Mhm.
And it says that positive polarity sees love in all things,
Okay.
but negative polarity is clever and it needs free will to maintain power.
So it's like they're manipulating free will for their own ends. Interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it says that holding the instrument's hand can actually prevent deeper levels of meditation that precede the trance state.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's like this energetic sensitivity there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it defines the higher self as a mid-6 density entity offering service to itself.
Okay.
And it talks about how visualizations often begin with we're within the indigo ray,
Well,
which was like the gateway,
Okay.
and that from there, light can be invoked for communication or healing,
Mm-hmm.
and that rituals can crystallize energy centers.
Okay, so it's like you're using these techniques to focus and direct energy.
Right.
And that it distinguishes between the vibration or density of love and the distortion of love.
Okay.
So the vibration of love is like the density where those who have learned loving without distortion seek light wisdom.
Okay.
And then the distortion of love is like the great activator.
Okay, so there's like these different levels of love.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it talks about how creation happens. So it
Okay.
starts with pure motion, which is pure love,
Okay.
and that vibrates to create a photon,
Mm-hmm.
which is the basic light particle,
Okay.
and then that condenses into the different densities.
So it's like this cascading process of creation.
Right.
Wow.
And it says that the concept of 7 color categories for light is specific to one particular logos,
Okay.
and that our sun is a sub-logos.
Okay.
And then it explains that the sub-logos differentiated experiential components within the patterns of intelligent energy set by the logos of the galaxy.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like
Yeah.
there's this hierarchy of logos,
Yeah.
and then it emphasizes that you need balance in the mind-body-spirit complex
Okay.
to reach a level of lack of distortion,
Mhm.
to tap intelligent energy through crystals.
So you need to be in alignment to access that energy.
Right.
Okay.
And then it explains the spirit complex as a channel for universal, planetary, and personal importings into consciousness,
Okay.
and from consciousness to intelligent infinity.
So it's like this two-way street.
Right.
Yeah.
And it says that mind, body, and spirit are intertwined.
Okay.
And this says that the orientation of the mind is the primary factor determining the effect of physical catalysts.
So how you perceive things really shapes your reality.
Right.
Okay.
And that planetary catastrophes are a symptom of difficult harvest,
Mhm.
not like consciously programmed catalyst.
Okay.
And then it talks about how in harvesting to 4th density, positive red ray is the activated basis,
Okay.
and the sum is violet ray energy.
Yep.
And then it talks about how wanderers hazard forgetting to serve others by radiating love, and that catalyst in 3rd density can polarize them efficiently if that forgetting is penetrated.
So they need to remember their mission.
Right. And it describes the higher self as a gift from the future selfness of late 6th density.
Okay.
And that the white light of the sublogos begins in metaphysical darkness and transfigures it to create dimensions.
So light emerging from darkness?
Right.
Wow.
And then it says that the transition from 2nd to 3rd density was about 1,350 years.
Okay.
And that the current 3rd to 4th density transition is volatile and is estimated to be between 100 and 700 years.
So we're in the midst of a pretty major shift.
Right.
Yeah.
And that catalytic mechanisms depend on the use of the catalyst, not the chosen polarity.
Okay.
And that the first body activating con death is the indigo ray form maker, or Ka,
Okay.
until Etheria is penetrated.
Okay.
And that achieving violet ray intelligent infinity while in yellow ray is like a passport to the next octave.
Wow.
But it requires utmost care.
So it's a powerful but potentially risky thing.
Right. And then it says that the logos experiencing itself as a way to view each logos and its design,
Okay.
and that the significator being a complex introduces dynamic tension and free will,
Okay.
and that polarity's purpose is to develop the potential to do work,
Okay.
which is enhanced by voluntary searching for lessons in 3rd and 4th densities.
So it's like we're here to learn and grow.
Right.
Yeah.
And that positively or negatively polarized adepts call through the spirit to the universe for power.
Okay.
And that third density is the density of calling for the sun, sub-logos.
Okay.
Um, and then Ra says that they have not traveled to other major galaxies, but they can reach in love,
Okay.
and that there are wanderers that exist from other galaxies who are drawn by specific needs.
So we're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he says that the service to self-polarization appeared farther out from the center of the galactic spiral,
Oh, okay.
and that at the beginning of the octave, many galactic systems appeared and grew outward from a plenum,
Okay.
not a void.
Okay.
And that much of creation was manifested without the consciousness as we know it,
Okay.
and that the unified creation is the logos,
Okay.
and that self-conscious sub-logoi developed to pursue knowledge of self using densities.
So it's like consciousness emerged over time.
Right.
Okay.
And that the concept of service to self didn't exist before the veiling process,
Okay.
and that graduation to fourth density requires welcoming the white light of the creator.
Yeah, okay.
And then it talks about how before the veil, dreams were for learning from inner and outer plane teachers,
Okay.
not utilizing unconscious catalysts,
Mm-hmm.
and that the veiling caused a qualitative change in experience.
So it's like things shifted dramatically.
Right.
Okay.
And that before veiling, sexual energy transfer in green ray had no blockage,
Okay.
but it was weak due to the ease of transfer.
Okay.
And that the primary veiling was significant, like covering jewels,
Mm.
making almost no facets of the creator consciously known to the mind.
Wow, so it's like we were blinded to the true nature of reality.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.